Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Shields. And today I've got a repeat guest. If you listened to a few episodes ago, I talked to Daniel Seidler of teleptsolutions.com, and he helped us just as we were getting into the coronavirus issues and how to start doing tele-PT visits. And I talked to him the other day and thought, man, you've probably learned some things as you've been coaching people how to transition patients and some things you might recommend since our last visit. And so I thought I'd bring him on again and do an update in regards to tele-PT. First of all, Daniel, thanks for coming back, man.
Thank you, Nathan. It's a pleasure to be here. And thanks for having me on again. It's great.
Yeah, sure. Well, you've gone through a whirlwind over the past, and it's only been like 4 weeks, right?
About 4 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and you're in New York City, so you're seeing the brunt of the coronavirus cases in the country. But as it pertains to looking back, what are there some things that you have learned over the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks that you'd want to share as you've been helping other PT owners get their telehealth services established?
Well, first off, being in New York, it's been amazing to see how we have mobilized. The city's mobilized. People really, for the most part, I'm in Brooklyn, and for the most part, people have stayed at home and followed the instructions of leadership. It's been awesome to see what healthcare workers are doing, the commitment that people have made, and the sacrifices that people have made. Mm-hmm. One cool thing that happens here, and Nathan, you experienced it while we were on the phone the other night, at 7 p.m. every night, people get out, open their windows, get on the rooftops, go out to the terraces and cheer for the healthcare workers and
awesome.
People who are actually putting in the sacrifice and putting in the work. So anyone who's listening, who's been on the front lines, it's amazing. And I give you guys lots of kudos for doing that.
Because that's when the shifts changed, right? People usually work 7 to 7.
That's when people are getting off their shift at the hospitals. Yeah.
And so that's just cool that you guys would do that as a community for your frontline workers there.
It's very cool. New Yorkers very rarely come together for something, but I think everybody recognizes the value that's being put in.
Oh yeah.
And thank you to the PTs who are out there on the front lines. I know, I've been reading blogs and Twitters and Twitter posts and LinkedIn posts about people who are acute care PTs and other PTs who are still working in their clinics and really taking all the precautions to do it as safely and as sanitarily as possible. But I mean, going into hospitals, man, you guys are heroes. That's awesome.
Right.
And doing it safely. I mean, people need us right now. So
that's true. That's true.
And I've seen everything happening from the telehealth perspective, and PTs are doing everything they can to connect with their patients and make themselves available to patients and accessible to patients. There have been a lot of challenges. Reimbursement is still a challenge in many places, and particularly with Medicare. I mean, we can talk more about that after, the concessions and everything going on with being able to do some visits and some connections with patients, but that's still a struggle, and it makes it very hard for a private practice owner who, we're talking to today, a lot of practice owners, a lot of tough decisions to make in terms of keeping their practices open, physically open, just through telehealth or just bare bones, I don't envy you guys. I know it's a tough spot right now.
Yeah, it's been a weird challenge for people to keep their PT doors open because, not necessarily because they're getting a decrease in referrals, but because patients don't want to come. They don't want to get out of their houses and submit themselves to being out in the environment and risk getting sick. And so it's hard to convince those patients to come to their therapy visits 2 to 3 times a week. And as I've been talking to owners, it's been hard for them to stay in connection with them and almost having to convince them about the necessity of continued PT services, even through telehealth services. And so it's been hard for them to stay afloat in those instances. They've got their post-op patients that they're continuing to work with. Maybe occasionally they'll get an acute injury that comes through the door, but they're not getting referrals, and it's been hard to connect with them and get and convince patients to get out of their homes, it seems.
Yeah, in some cases, the patients shouldn't be coming out of their homes.
It's
In
true.
areas like New York and other densely populated areas, I don't think PT should be going to. Patients should not be going to an outpatient PT clinic unless it's absolutely necessary.
Hmm.
That they have to see somebody in person, and in that case, oftentimes a home visit might be more appropriate.
Yeah.
So that's one part of it. I know in other parts of the country, it's definitely viable.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, high risk patients with
Hmm.
other comorbidities should not be going into PT clinics. They shouldn't be
Exactly.
going out into the public.
Exactly.
So that's a major challenge, and I get that. So that is one place where telehealth absolutely should be
Mhm.
priority. And
Yeah.
I've had this conversation multiple times with multiple owners, and the conversation that they have to be having, and their front desk has to be having, and their clinicians have to be having with those patients who need their services is, this is how we're going to do it. This is how you're going to get the essential services that you need. You need to be getting PT right now. If you have a frozen shoulder, you have a post-op total knee, um, unless you're really well guided and know what you're doing on your own completely, then you need PT right now,
Yeah.
or you're going to have major complications down the road. And it's not a threat. It's not, this isn't trying to scare a patient. This is how rehab works. That knee is not going to heal. You're not going to get back to normal function if you're
Hmm.
not diligent about it with the guidance of a professional. And that's what PTs often think of themselves as only manual therapists and can't get much done without using their hands. I mean,
Yeah.
what we do is based on our knowledge, our problem solving skills, and our compassion. So that message has to be brought across to the patient.
And even going back, I think it's a physical therapist nature, just based on our culture. It's hard to push physical therapy on people, and so when we're trying to push our services on our patients, it kind of feels awkward. I think I'm speaking for the majority of PTs out there. Maybe you've seen it as well, but to actually take a firm stance and say, no, you actually need to do this, and this is how we're going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for us to do, but it seems like those PT companies that have taken a firm stand and just said, well, this is the way we're doing things going forward, have been a little bit more successful at implementing tele-PT services. Am I right?
Yeah, and there's different strategies. One in particular is having the patient acknowledge that they need PT. I mean, I think if you ask most patients after surgery, do you realize that how is your knee going to heal after this surgery?
Mm-hmm.
Most of them will say, well, I need PT, but I'll wait till you guys reopen your doors. And that's the conversation then is we're we're not sure when we're going to be open for you to come in or when you're going to be comfortable to come in.
Yeah.
So let's get the ball rolling now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give this a shot. I know it's going to be helpful. You may not be convinced yet it's going to be helpful, but I know it's going to be helpful. And as
Mm-hmm.
soon as you do a visit with me, you're going to recognize how helpful I can be, how effective this can be. I think another avenue that's very important is to really communicate with your docs. Anybody who has referred a patient to you, they've sent you a patient because they trust you. So have the conversation with them and tell them, this is how we're doing it right now. This is how we can be most effective. This is how we can be safest. This is how we can be most contribute to public health most effectively, is by
Mm-hmm.
keeping people at their homes. And I am trained to do a telehealth visit as effectively as an in-person visit. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not using my hands, but I'm going to make every visit valuable, and we're going to progress towards the patient's goals. And if we all know that if a patient hears it from their doctor, it's often it means something more to them than just
That's
hearing
true.
it from the PT.
Yeah.
You know, not downplaying the fact that we should be communicating with the patients as well, but to hear from their doc can just bring even more
Mm-hmm.
emphasis to it.
Yeah. And anything else that you found with the PT owners that have been successful in transitioning patients over? Any tips, any guidelines in that regard?
Communication is key. I mean, that's definitely the key.
Mm.
I give my clients other resources. You know, some people want to see research, particularly doctors want to see research.
Mm.
There's research out there.
Oh,
You know,
really?
there's not an abundance of convincing research that telehealth is as effective as in-office care, but there are some studies that say exactly that.
Mm.
There will be many more after this moment in time. You know,
Right.
in the next 6 months, I know that there's several studies going on already that are very relevant to what we're
Mm.
doing, what we're talking about. And look, I've always said that telehealth is not for every patient, every visit, but it can be extremely effective with a lot of your patients
Mm.
for a bulk of their visits. And particularly at this moment when they can't get other care,
Mhm.
it's going to be effective, and it's the most effective thing we can do for them.
Yeah.
So other strategies are, well, I said communication. You know, it's really about just for a lot of patients, it's about the technology. So
Yeah.
yeah, so elderly patients may feel like, oh, you know, I don't know how to use computer. I'm
Yeah.
not sure how I'm going to get on my phone. I have to download an app.
Uh-huh.
My advice to PTs when you're choosing your platform for telehealth is start with simple, particularly on the patient side. You know,
Yeah.
PTs are not necessarily the most savvy technological population of people, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, we're PTs because we're not into technology, or we're not into technology because we're PTs. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
either way, you know, we don't, besides writing notes, we don't use computers for our daily functions. So we're not IT. We're not
Hmm.
an IT department. You have to make it as simple on both sides.
Hmm.
So choose a very straightforward, easy to use platform.
And where are you pushing people, or what are you recommending nowadays? Because they loosened the HIPAA guidelines. We
Hmm.
talked about that in our first visit, but
Yeah,
within the next week or so, they changed it and said that you don't have to
right.
have those HIPAA compliant programs. What are some of the better programs that you're seeing now?
Well, the people I work with, the clients I work with, are looking to use telehealth for the long run.
Okay.
So, and whether you are or not, I still suggest you get on a HIPAA compliant platform.
Sure.
You know, this is about it more than, you know, unless it's completely obstructing you from connecting. First you want to connect with the patient, right? Patient care first. But beyond that, you want to protect their privacy. I
Yeah.
think that's important. You know, security and privacy. So get on a HIPAA compliant platform. I tend to like Better PT. I find it really easy to use. It's very functional in the basic functions.
Mm.
They're cut, so scheduling and connecting.
Better PT.
Those are the most. What's that?
BetterPT.com.
BetterPT.com. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's a company.
Good to know.
Their customer service is excellent. They're a PT focused technology company. So
Mm.
they have other products for the PT profession and for the PT industry.
Hmm.
But they're really drilling in on telehealth right now. They're doing a great job.
Gotcha.
People tend to like Doxy. They find it really easy to use.
Okay.
And the other one that one of my clients is using, and they're pretty happy with it, is TheraLink.
Theralink. Okay.
TheraLink, yeah.
Gotcha.
Um, I've heard about Zoom. I'm not going to bash Zoom. It's a way to connect.
Yeah.
You can get a HIPAA compliant version.
Oh,
I
really?
believe you can get a HIPAA compliant version. But you know, they're not looking at the PT industry. They're not directed at PT. Um,
Okay.
you know, they're a
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah, I gotcha. And what are you recommending for the PTs to feel comfortable? I'm certain that not all the PTs are totally comfortable on the telehealth calls. What kind of advice or what kind of input can you give them, feedback you can give them from your experience on how to get them comfortable in treating patients
Yeah.
over a call?
Well, first off, I think training. You know, you have to have specific training for being a telehealth
Okay.
PT, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which means, you know, when I train PTs, I'm working with them on what they already know and helping them apply what they already know to the telehealth environment. So first of all, be comfortable speaking to the camera. Okay, connect with your patient as best you
Mm-hmm.
can, because that
Yeah.
is, you know, one way that we're most effective at, and almost every PT who is an effective one will tell you they're part of their value and part of their effectiveness with a patient is the connection and the
Mm-hmm.
trust. Super important. And you have to be able to do that through a camera and through a video connection.
Yeah.
And just making that eye contact and speaking directly to them. There are, even when you're one-on-one with a patient, there are distractions,
Mm-hmm.
right? So make that connection first and foremost.
Okay.
Secondly, resort to come back to the things that you know as a PT. What are you going to do typically at the beginning of a visit? And depending on the patient, maybe you put them on some heat at the beginning of a visit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instruct them to do that on their own.
Okay.
So get a heating pad, heat yourself, be ready for our visit. And this is like the first visit is kind of prep for the rest of it.
Okay.
You'll do some things in the first visit, maybe review home exercises but set the stage for your following visits. So talk with your patient first visit. You talk with them about any equipment or tools that they might have in their house, and instruct them on the equipment that you want them to buy. Give yourself depending on the patient, depending on your situation, I like $100 limit. Tell the patient, look, we're going to keep this under $100. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 things that you need to have to help us be more effective. So things like a foam roller, a stretch strap. We talked about a stretch strap. A sport band. That's actually we're self-mobilizations with a sport band. A pulley, a yoga mat if they're going to be on the floor, things like that. So I have my list, and I'm putting together a little shop for PT practices to use.
Okay.
To instruct their patients, just go to the shop, and these are our top 10 recommendations for home use.
There you go.
For your telehealth visits.
Yeah.
And then from that you're doing a lot of the things you would do in a clinic, except you're not touching the patient. You're instructing them to do a lot of things on their own. So if it's a foam roller, you're talking them through that foam roller session. You're showing them how to position their legs and how to position their posterior rotator cuff muscles on the foam roller as they roll side to side, up and down, and obviously speaking in layman's terms as much as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you doing a lot of mirroring, or do you find that works best?
Depending on the patient. I try to do as little of that as possible.
Oh, really?
I try to challenge myself and communicate verbally as much as possible.
Okay.
But certain populations you do need to mirror. You do need to demonstrate. So I have a group that is very heavy with they have a lot of patients with Parkinson's, and as some of us know, Parkinson's patients respond very well to exactly that, to mirroring, to seeing a demo and repeating what the therapist does. So what they've done is they've set up a room at their clinic that's strictly for telehealth. Okay, and some groups are doing that, some are not. Some people are treating from home where they can't exactly do that, but they have a treatment table, and the therapist will lie down on the table, do a supine to sit transfer, do a sit to stand transfer, and then have the patient repeat. Things like that.
Okay.
Some practices are using home exercise programs and using streaming videos to instruct, which is a helpful tool. I tend to work with what the clinic has. I don't personally have a preference. My ideal scenario is that the PT can talk a patient through a visit without any video demonstration if it's not necessary. And then you can reinforce it with home exercise sheets or videos.
I gotcha. And so I'm sure part of your training then is going to be some role play. All right, I'm going to act like the patient. Maybe you recommend they do that within their clinics and go through a treatment program, or especially as it pertains to looking forward in the patients that are doing telehealth is to say, okay, what exercises are they going to be doing? What kind of equipment are they going to need? And the PTs need to be well prepared going into that call. Just like you're saying, the patients need to be prepared. The PTs need to be prepared with what kind of equipment they're going to ask for, what kind of exercises they're going to instruct and follow up on, and what kind of input they're going to give that is successful. I mean, doing that role play, you can have it in your mind that it's going to go a certain way and I'm going to say certain things, but once it comes out of your mouth, it's a completely different ballgame. And then it's received in a completely different way. So you got to make sure that your wording is correct, right?
Oh, absolutely. And going back a step, at the beginning of every visit, you're reassessing your patient too. So you may
Yeah.
go in with a plan, as we like to do, but that plan may be completely confounded if the patient re-injured their shoulder trying to open a window yesterday.
Mm,
So then you're taking
yeah.
a step back, and yeah, still your verbal communication has to be precise. It has to be directed. In terms of what exactly you want the patient. And oftentimes, you tell the patient to turn right and they turn left. So it's like, okay, let's reset, let's start again. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, that communication is, um, I think most PTs will realize we do pivot a lot in the clinic,
Hmm.
meaning like you change your plan, or
Yeah.
depending how the patient is tolerating something, you can progress it or even regress an exercise.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a lot, and maybe it's going back to, I said starting with some foam rolling, maybe to soften up and soften up the soft tissue and get some blood flowing in the area.
Yeah.
Um, Patient starts doing their exercises and they're still really stiff. Maybe you go back to doing some more soft tissue work, or
Hmm.
modify that soft tissue work a little bit, and then come back to exercises. So it's still being very agile in your care, and
Hmm.
compassionate and patient with the patient,
Oh yeah.
because
Yeah.
and they'll get better as patients as well as you
You
go
mean
through a program.
with the telehealth care,
Yeah,
in their
absolutely.
response and their, yeah, and they get used to it.
Yeah.
Is it do you find it's been difficult for owners to not only transition patients into doing tele PT, but also then maintaining their visits after doing the first couple? Maybe they get frustrated a little too quick and have little patience for it.
Well, most of my clinics have told me the patients that they can get started tend to keep going. They're
Cool.
not they're not pulling back. They're not saying
Nice.
this wasn't worth it.
Hmm.
The PTs are trained to, these are not home exercise program review sessions.
Hmm.
You may trickle some of that in, but this is a real therapy session. So
Hmm.
they have the understanding. Each of the PTs has an understanding that they need to be dynamic in their care. They need to
Hmm.
connect with their patient. They need to help them progress towards their goals, just like they would in the clinic. So
Hmm.
as long as that message is getting across, patients tend to get it, and they realize, like, this is how I'm doing my PT now. This is it. Just like
Hmm.
I would be going to the clinic. And you know, any patient it seems to me that patients who have bought into the premise of PT, once they start telehealth, they're going with it. So it's
Hmm.
not that tough of a sell once you show them what you can actually accomplish.
From what it sounds
And
like,
I always,
as you're talking, I'm thinking the PTs also have to have the mindset. This isn't home exercise follow-up time. This is actually a treatment session, and I think maybe they get stuck on that. I don't know. Maybe you've come against some of those hurdles, but maybe they get
well,
stuck on just
yeah.
following up on their home exercises and making sure that they're doing them right, instead of actually considering it a full-blown therapy session. And there's a different mindset there.
That's one of my first messages to every PT. The first thing we talk about in the clinical training component of my training is exactly that. This is, you need to, if you're thinking that you're getting on a video call with a patient and you're just going to review their home exercises and that's what you're going to do every session, then this is not going to work. It needs to
Mm,
be, you need to have the mindset that this is how you're treating your patient for now.
mm,
Maybe for the long run too, but this is a new thing for you. But have the idea in your mind that this is these are real treatments, and that message has to be getting across to the patient as well. So that's the message from the clinician, from the front desk, from the practice in general, and from docs, that we're doing real care here by video.
mm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that in itself, like you said, the mindset for the PT, once the PT understands that, it becomes a lot easier. It makes the whole thing a lot easier
Yeah,
and
the
more effective.
PT's really got to come at it like, how can I provide real value in this situation?
Yeah,
Simply
totally.
looking over some exercising and what some of their exercises and watching them do it isn't going to be sufficient, and it's not going to be valuable. And that's something that patients are going to turn off on fairly quickly. Whereas if they have the right mindset and they go into it seriously and look for opportunities to provide value and really follow up like it's a regular session, but you just can't touch them, then they can really
Yep.
provide some added value and really stretch their brains a little bit.
Well, it is stretching your brain, because I had this conversation with a PT just the other day, the director at one of my clinics, and he was stuck. He's like, I have this patient that I've seen 3 times already, and she's done great, but I'm getting to a point where I'm not sure I can still be effective with her. And I had to ask him, I was like, well, has she reached her goals? Does she still need PT? He's
Mm.
like, yeah, I mean, that's why we're doing this, and that's why she's still engaged. But he's like, I'm not sure what else. I'm like, okay, well, what's her condition and what are her goals? She had a total knee replacement about 6 weeks ago, I think, and she's towards the end of her care with him. She's doing well, but she still can't go up and down stairs without pain. She
Mm.
still can't get up and down out of a chair without pain. So I'm like, first of all, function. Think about function first. I mean, that's really, but also think about how you can progress things in terms of making them more challenging, and the more challenging situations that she might be in her life.
Mm-hmm.
So low surfaces, heavy, adding weight to a component, to an exercise. And I went back to, I'm a PT, but I also have CrossFit training background. I was a CrossFit coach for about for 2 years.
Uh-huh.
So the things you want to change your variables, right? So
Mm.
increase volume, increase resistance, increase time,
Mm-hmm.
or decrease if the patient needs to regress a little bit.
Sure.
Change planes. Think of doing things on different planes.
Mm-hmm.
And something kind of, something went off. A bell rang in his head. He was like, "Oh, I get it. I think I have about 40 more exercises I can do with her." He
Ah.
kind of, at first he was just like, we're just doing like stuff in her home. I'm like, body weight, body weight, body weight. There's whether it's one leg, eyes closed, balance stuff,
Mm-hmm.
other perturbations. You have her stand on a pillow, all these things
Mm-hmm.
that she's going to face in her everyday life. You can help her with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I'm
could see
definitely
what.
mixing your mobility and your standard. Have a base,
Yeah.
base of what you're gonna, a warm up, stretching and mobility stuff that you're gonna start with. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of ways to progress, even with no equipment. We've used
Yeah.
equipment as a crutch for a long time, and our hands are, in a way, a little bit of a crutch too. Use your brain a little bit more, right?
What a great challenge to physical therapists to stretch them a
Totally,
little bit. I mean,
totally.
what would you do if you couldn't use your hands? No, go. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
And so many times we get into that rut and that comfort zone. Well, this patient, this is how I treat him, and it's going to involve this kind of manual work and these kind of exercises, and here's my protocol. Well, what if you can't do the manual work anymore and you don't have
that's
access
right.
to all the equipment? Can you still perform as a physical therapist? That's a serious challenge you can lay down on somebody.
Yeah, and I did that myself.
Did
That's
you?
when I first started experimenting with telehealth about a year and a half ago. I was working in a clinic at the time, and I challenged myself a couple of days, like in successive weeks, like one day a week. I would try to treat all of my patients without touching them,
Mm,
and and I could do it. I mean, I
yeah.
once I told myself I'm not going to touch the patient, I could do it. And I was educating them on how to do self mobilization, soft tissue work, walking them through
Mm,
programs. Oftentimes, I'd walk up to a patient to be able to like give them tactile cues and have to check
yep.
myself.
Yep.
Like don't touch the patient. And I think it's a great exercise. It is a brain exercise. It to me, I needed to do that to prove to myself that I could do a telehealth visit.
Mm-hmm. And
And
it also required you to do some study, I'm sure. I mean, you're probably studying on self-mobilization techniques if you hadn't
exactly,
brushed up on those
exactly,
before and stuff like that,
exactly.
right?
We were talking about this before the call. I like
Yeah.
Kelly Starrett. He's a PT out west. Very very apropos that you have your San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge
Background.
up in the background today.
Yeah.
Kelly's a PT he's a CrossFit guy in the Bay Area,
Mm-hmm.
and he put out a book called Becoming a Supple Leopard. I'm looking at the book,
Uh,
Becoming a Supple Leopard, and a lot of it, a portion of the book is about self mobilization,
mm-hmm.
and it's fascinating. I mean, you can do a lot of mobilizations on your own, maybe with a piece of equipment or, a band or
Hmm.
some other device, and be really effective. And it's just another way that PTs can educate their patients to help themselves. Um, Obviously, use caution. Use your
Sure.
your clinical decision making skills, and don't have patients doing grade fives on their cervical spine, but a traction on the shoulder on the glenohumeral joint with the help of a sports strap
Uh-huh.
is can work wonders. And now that patient has that tool to do it on their own, but you're guiding them through that.
Mm. Yeah, and that kind of instruction can be really powerful because now they know how to care for themselves going forward.
Yeah,
And to an extent, and maybe you don't promote it so much, but to an extent, they can then help the people around them with some of the minor issues that they come up with, and that's an opportunity to promote your services as well.
sure. I mean,
Yeah.
also, if a patient is taking great care of themselves and their family members or other people see them doing that, or they know that they've suddenly become more knowledgeable about how to care for themselves,
Mhm.
they'll ask them, "Where'd you learn that?" And
Yeah.
oh, my telehealth PT.
Yeah.
Nathan
That's
taught me
cool.
these great little tricks.
That's right. Well, anything else that you're finding that might have changed in your approach as you're talking to PTs about establishing tele-PT services for their clinics?
Um, Technology is still a challenge.
Okay.
Well, I'll say this: technology is still a challenge, but I've learned some techniques on how to get around it or get better at helping patients with the technology challenges.
Uh-huh.
So, some big ones are the most obvious is the connection and the Wi-Fi or whatever. But I've also learned working with a group in rural Texas that there basically are no wires to where their patients are. Okay, so everyone gets their internet access by satellite,
Oh, wow.
and there are times of day when everyone's on the internet basically in the area.
Oh, wow.
So internet access is low. So here's one thing I learned: don't do the telehealth visit with a person in rural Texas between noon and 2 p.m.
Because that's when everyone's on.
because that's when everyone's on, right? So early morning, late afternoon or evening is usually pretty good. So we're joking about it, but that's real.
Let's,
It's
yeah.
just like you don't want to be driving in traffic in New York City during rush hour, or
Hmm.
scheduling appointments at 5 p.m. somewhere where you're gonna have to drive,
Hmm.
because you're just gonna hit that traffic, and
Hmm.
that's a reality of the situation. So work with what's going on around you and
Hmm.
be sensitive to it. If you know a patient has a bad internet connection, and particularly at a certain time, another PT who's working from home told me that her internet resets every day, 2 or 3 times a day.
Oh, wow.
And she goes, I don't know the exact times, except for one time, 1:36 p.m. every day, my internet resets and it drops everything. So I'm like,
No.
okay, well, I guess you're not doing any 1:30 sessions.
Yeah, right.
He's like, yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Oh, wow.
So be aware of your technology and the weaknesses of your technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can work around them.
What do you find are any really successful stories of providers that you've been dealing with here the last few weeks? People that have been able to successfully transition directly out of um, the majority of brick and mortar care to the telehealth services?
Yeah, I mean, well, the biggest is it's really kind of general, just because there's so many. But the
Really?
biggest is that certain clinics are just they're shut down. They're not seeing patients in the New York area, New York City area. There is no in-office activity going on.
Okay.
So, I mean, I have a client they're doing hundreds of visits a week. They were doing over 1,000 a week before in their office, but now they're doing hundreds of it. They've been really aggressive.
Of telehealth
Speak
PT.
Telehealth. I'm sorry. They're doing
Yeah.
hundreds of telehealth visits a week. They've been very aggressive. Contacted every patient. They're doing telehealth visits. They're doing e-visits, and they're connecting. As many of their PTs that are willing to participate, every one of them is reaching out to all their patients and making sure that they're getting the care that they need. And like you said it before, it's like, um, if the groups that are communicating with their patients and letting them know how helpful they can be, they're the ones who are actually succeeding with this. If
Mm,
you're being kind of willy-nilly about it, then as an owner, your PTs are not going to feel that urgency, um, and and patients aren't going to understand how valuable you can be.
mm.
And look, there's plenty of examples out there of practices. I still speak with uh, practices that are not sure they want to open. They haven't seen patients in 3 weeks,
Wow.
and they're not sure what they want to do. They're just kind of waiting around.
Mm,
Um,
that's tough.
they're not being very effective with their patients right now.
No, no, and that's the last thing you want to do is lose communication with those
Yeah,
patients.
exactly,
Last thing you want to do.
exactly. And
Wow.
yeah, I mean, for a couple of reasons, some patients will fall off the map and really have problems down the road, but others are going to go to your competitor.
Yeah,
They'll find somebody who does do telehealth.
yeah, they'll find someone who can do it successfully.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
Um,
Right.
I think, I'll emphasize it again. Um, there are definitely clinics that have taken the bull by the horns, and they've trained their staff. They've figured out, they have the resources to do it themselves. They have their policy and procedure manuals. They have their consent forms. They have their forms for patients to fill out, and tip sheets and everything that I think is super relevant to doing this successfully. Really
Hmm.
a roadmap for telehealth success, and they've figured it out themselves.
Hmm.
But I know that there's plenty of practice owners out there that um, they don't have the time or the resources to do it on their own, and it's become really draining for them emotionally and financially to
Yeah.
do all this research and do all this. There's a lot. It's really simple to just pick up a phone and do a FaceTime chat. You can do that.
Hmm.
And at this stage in this Wild West, you can do that.
Hmm.
But if you want to do it right, you have to have a roadmap. You have to know what you're doing, and to do it legally. So either do that research, if you have the resource to do it, or get somebody to show you the ropes. And it doesn't have to be me, but there are other people out there who are doing something similar to what I do.
Hmm.
Um, but I absolutely suggest you get professional advice on this.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming that you're finding the most successful clinics are the ones that are saying, well, we're going to do this for the long haul. This isn't just a 2-month Band-Aid, but we're actually going to implement this now and continue to offer it as a service going forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean,
Really?
there are some that are doing the Band-Aid, and they're depending on how much effort they're putting into it.
Mm.
They're either doing well and treating the patients who are reaching out to them, or they're actively contacting patients and letting them know that the service is available.
Hmm.
Some of them are doing fine with that, but my clients are all in it for the long run. Those are people I want to work with. That they're looking to build this as part of their practice. And look, whether it's by necessity or just to get a leg up on your market, I think telehealth is going to be a huge part
Yeah,
of physical therapy care delivery in the future.
I think so.
This moment in time is definitely a game changer. It's
Hmm.
definitely it's going to create a shift for healthcare models, for reimbursement models, for legal models as well.
Hmm.
So the environment that we practice in is going to be significantly different a year from now than it is right now.
Oh, for sure. Well, and you brought it up. What are you seeing now in regards to reimbursement for tele-PT?
What I'm seeing mostly nationwide, most of the major commercial payers are paying for telehealth now.
Uh-huh.
Um, there's still, Medicare's the biggie. I don't know what percentage of Americans or people who need physical therapy are covered by Medicare in some capacity. It's probably around 30% or so.
Hmm.
And Medicare is not paying for telehealth yet.
Okay.
Our PT codes are authorized to be utilized, but not, unfortunately, PTs are not authorized providers or eligible
Ah,
providers of
that just
telehealth
drives me
physical
nuts.
therapy. Don't get me started, right?
Yeah.
So it is what it is for the moment. And I've spoken with Cara Gaynor at APTA. She's the director of advocacy at the
Hmm.
APTA, and she has weekly conversations with CMS, and she's pushing so hard to make this happen. And
Hmm.
there are other forces in play to make this happen for PTs for the short term, and the long term.
Okay.
It's, you're still pushing against, it's still government agency and red tape, and it's very challenging to make these things happen. So I feel, as much as I'm frustrated and annoyed by that, I feel for her and the effort that they're putting in, the APTA. So once again, support the APTA, support the private practice section, go to their site and write letters. They have template letters for advocacy about CMS and Medicare reimbursement. I think it's super important at this time.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Do
And
that.
what about Medicaid? Are they
Medicaid in
following
most
Medicare?
states, no, Medicaid in most states is covering telehealth PT.
Cool.
And every state is set up differently in terms of Medicaid. In New York had Medicaid coverage for telehealth PT as of January 1st.
Nice.
So nothing to do with this. There was just advocacy before. And Medicaid in New York is, I'm not sure how many states have similar arrangements, but most of Medicaid is managed by their semi-private companies. They're basically, they're funded companies by the Medicaid program, and they administer Medicaid. I'm sorry. So those payers were all paying for telehealth prior to COVID.
Nice. Okay.
And reimbursement is close to market value. So they're basically one of the better payers in New York right now.
I got you. Yeah. But you're still using the GT code or the GT modifier, and the place of service code is what again?
02 typically.
02. Okay.
But every payer is different.
Oh, right.
Every payer is different. So United Healthcare, I believe nationwide, is using 95 and 02, and check with your particular payer just to be sure, or your provider reps. Cigna was actually the first commercial payer that came out and agreed to pay for telehealth services. And they agreed to pay for evaluations and 97110, 2 units of 97110 per visit.
Oh,
which that's a little that definitely is prevented. It's restrictive. Deflating. But 2 units of 97110, you're laughing.
Yeah.
They want place of service 11 and the code GQ.
Interesting.
GQ, which is typically stored and forward, but they're using that. So like I said, every payer is different. Anthem is different in every state. United Healthcare, going back to them, 95 modifier and place of service 11.
Wow.
And Aetna is using the GT modifier. And what I've seen so far is they want to see 02 for telehealth place of service.
Okay.
And we've gotten, different states have gotten different, Aetna has said that they want to have a nationwide policy on this, but different states have gotten different results on their claims. So double check on that. But GT modifier 02, we're saying for now.
How crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts. At least we can do something and push that narrative a little bit and show that we're still working and still getting results, and that I mean, if we do lay down, then that's no way to get our message across that we need to have these services reimbursed to us.
That's right. And now is a really big moment. Now is the moment where we can show payers, and we show patients, payers, our communities, our referring docs, that we can be effective with telehealth. And we should be getting paid for these services because we can be effective with these with telehealth, right? So
yeah, for sure.
If you have the resources, please do some research. Keep your outcome studies. Keep track of your outcomes. Differentiate between your telehealth patients and your non-telehealth patients in terms of your outcomes. And I'm talking to practice owners here. And look for opportunities to get involved in research studies. And the APTA private practice section are definitely looking for data. They want data points. If anyone was doing telehealth prior to the pandemic, please also let the APTA and private practice advocacy at apta.org is Cara Gaynor, and she wants to hear from people who were doing telehealth before or have good data on what they're doing right now.
Advocacy at apta.org. Okay.
That's right.
Nice. Yeah, important to share.
Yeah, and that's, this is that opportunity, A, to show everybody how effective we can be, and B, the payers need that data to justify paying for our services.
Mm.
That's their stance on these things,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Okay, I got
And
you.
as of now, there's not enough data out there.
Yeah, yeah,
We
gotcha.
know anecdotally we can be super effective. We know from research studies we can be effective,
Mm-hmm.
um, but there's not enough data points.
Okay, cool,
So
cool.
that's where we can all work together on that.
Well, anything else you want to share with the listeners before we sign off?
Um, keep first of all, be safe. Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's really first and foremost. Be safe. Because be safe within your home. Be safe with your patients if you're working in the clinic. Be safe within your communities. We're all in this together. We
mm-hmm.
all need to take care of each other.
Yeah,
So first and foremost, as far as telehealth goes, it's an opportunity to distance ourselves and still be effective.
yeah,
So I encourage you all to, at least in some capacity, offering telehealth to your patients,
yeah,
because I'm
for
sure
sure.
you all have patients who can use your services and can't get to you even if you are open.
Mm-hmm.
Train yourself well, train your staff well, get everybody on the same page, and look at this as a long-term solution, because
Yeah,
my belief is, like, there's not going to, the president may say, okay, we're good to go back to work now, but physical therapy practice are still, they're still hotbeds for infection. They're
yeah,
still, as much as you're wiping down every table 3 times before and after every patient, you're still in a confined space with a lot of people, depending on your practice.
yeah.
And not only is there actual risk, there's also perceived risk. So there
Mm-hmm.
will be patients who are going to be really hesitant to come running back to your clinic as soon as you open your doors, and you want to be there for them otherwise.
Yeah, there's no guarantee that people's fears are going to be subsided here
Yeah,
within the next month. I mean, that fear might, for some patients, might take 12, 18 months for them to feel comfortable going back to a healthcare setting like physical
yeah,
therapy, where there are
yeah,
multiple patients who are, they might even deem them as sickly, if you will,
yeah,
but they don't want to expose themselves to that, and they might be in a demographic, or they might have comorbidities that they just don't want to go
yeah,
out, and now with this, it's a fear of simply going out to a confined space with multiple people like you're talking about, and you might have an opportunity to still reach them and keep them on as patients and provide service.
yeah. And recognize your value. Your patients really, really need you.
Mm,
So you, this is telehealth is a way to be there for them
mm,
when you can't otherwise be.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and I think I'm glad you shared that point, because yeah, there's no guarantee people are just going to flip the switch and change their mindset and go out
yeah,
and do everything they did before. It's going to take maybe a year or two for some people to get comfortable to even go to a place that has a number of other people in the same building, in the same space.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So, can I share my information?
please do.
Thank you. Uh, teleptsolutions.com. My company
Uh-huh.
is Telept Solutions. Teleptsolutions.com. If you want to email me, it's I'll keep it simple. info@teleptsolutions.com.
There you go.
All right. And check out my website first. Lots of resources on there, lots of free resources and information. And please email me if you have any questions. I'm happy to have a quick consult with you. And I'm here for anyone who really wants to get things going in telehealth.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you've got some programs online where you can help people get started without with kind of a step-by-step process, right? Adding it to the website, setting them up and whatnot.
Yeah, actually, I'm also about to launch something on a virtual training platform. So we're using digital
Nice.
chalk to put videos and programs up. It's basically an intro to PT intro to telehealth PT for practice owners and clinicians and staff.
Mm-hmm.
9 chapters of detailed information, forms, scripts you can use. Really
Nice.
helpful. All automated, all self-directed training, and I'm happy to share that with you. We're releasing it next week, so the timing is good for
Nice.
this call.
Nice.
Yeah.
This is the first part of May, so people who are listening to it
Yep.
after
Oh,
this
very
should
good.
be
Thank
able,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, should be able to get there if they listen to it here in the near future. And you're
Yep.
also, I'm assuming, based on what you say, you're going to have equipment recommendations on there as well for
Yep.
patient side
Absolutely.
of things. Oh, that's
Yep.
cool.
Absolutely.
Good. Yeah,
Even instruction on how to choose a platform.
yeah. And my friends who have used your service have said it's pretty easy and they like it a lot, and it's been really helpful in
Cool.
establishing their
Thank you.
telehealth PT services. So I highly recommend it.
Great. Thank you, Nathan.
Cool.
Thanks for the
Well, thanks
time
for your
today.
time, man. Have a good day and be safe.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.